Now, remember when the so-called Disinformation Governance Board that was announced back in April of 2022? Here's what NPR wrote. 3 weeks, that's how long it took for the Department of Homeland Security to go from announcing a board intended to combat disinformation to suspending it. In those 3 weeks, both the Disinformation Governance Board and its leader, Nina Jankowicz, came under relentless and sometimes vicious attack from the right-wing media and Republican lawmakers. NPR continued. DSS initially shared a few details about the board's function and purview, leading to speculation and fears it would police online speech. As the board's public face, Jankowicz became a lightning rod, a well-regarded authority in online disinformation who has studied Russian information operations and advised governments under that of including former Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko. She was accused of being a Democrat hack. Conservatives seized on her tweets and passed statements as evidence of her partisan bias, end of quote. Now then, let's take a look at one of her past public statements. You tell me whether or not it suggests that this has been taken out of context.
And I am eligible for it because I'm verified, but there are a lot of people who shouldn't be verified who aren't, legit, in my opinion. I mean, they are real people, but they're not trustworthy. Anyway, so verified people can essentially start to edit Twitter the same sort of way that Wikipedia is, so they can add context to certain tweets. So just as an easy example, not from any political standpoint, if President Trump were still on Twitter and tweeted a claim about voter fraud, someone could add context from one of the 60 lawsuits that went through the court, or something that an election official in one of the states said, perhaps your own Secretary of State and his news conferences, something like that. Adding context so that people have a fuller picture rather than just an individual claim on a tweet.
Just as an easy example, not from a political standpoint, suppose Donald Trump said something, yada blah, etc. Now, the Associated Press said what you just saw and heard was taken out of context. Really? Now, about her tweets. Here's what she tweeted in October 2020. Back on the laptop from hell, apparently Biden notes 50 former national security officials and 5 former CIA heads that believe the laptop is a Russian influence operation. And Trump simply says, Russia, 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 end of quote. About Christopher Steele, who was instrumental in the fake Steele dossier, in August 2020, she tweeted, quote, listen to this last night. Chris Steele, yes, that Chris Steele provides some great historical context about the evolution of this info. Worth a listen, end of quote. Now, about these tweets, she insisted she checks her politics at the door. NPR said the attacks against her got personal. NPR said, and I'm quoting, Jankowicz has been barraged with abuse, harassment, and death threats. It all culminated in DHS's decision to put the board on pause for 75 days while the agency reviews its work addressing disinformation. The same day, Jankowicz quit, end of quote. And in August 2022, DHS Secretary Mayorkas disbanded the board altogether. Jankowicz later said in an interview, all the board wanted to do was coordinate among the DHS security components, like FEMA, or the Cyber and Infrastructure Security Agency, or Customs and Border Patrol, and just make sure that Americans had trustworthy information about issues connected to Homeland Security. She said, we weren't going to do anything related to political speech. Also, Forbes writes about a Republican report criticizing the FTC for going after Elon Musk after Musk purchased Twitter. The FTC has asked for, among other things, all internal communications related to Musk, details about the company's structure following thousands of layoffs, and information about how Twitter decides who can access internal records after several journalists took part in the release of what was called the Twitter Files that showed Twitter effectively censored conservatives before Musk took over. The FTC also wants information about Twitter's rollout of its revamped Twitter Blue subscription and a description of how the company now authenticates accounts. The FTC has sent over a dozen letters to Twitter since Musk bought it, and now accuses Musk of a, quote, troubling pattern of ongoing delay, close quote, related to the request, even though, according to the Wall Street Journal, Twitter has given some responses to the FTC. My guest is on the House Weaponization Conference Committee, which plans to subpoena the aforementioned Nina Jankowicz, Republican Mike Johnson of Louisiana. Now, you know you like the show. Be sure to hit that like button and also subscribe. We're trying to get our subscriptions up. And then scroll down and get on our mailing list because, believe it or not, from time to time, YouTube apparently has an issue with our videos. Whether it's one about the election of 2020, whether it's about the COVID mask mandates, whether it's about the so-called January 6th insurrection, every now and then, for some reason, YouTube has an issue with our videos. To make sure you never miss a video, get on our mailing list. And you see that donate button, hit that, throw a little something in the tip jar, make sure we can still giving you honest, hard-hitting programming. Larry with epoch.com, Larry with EPOCH.com. Congressman, you have a lot on your plate.
We do, Larry. Thank you. It's so good to be with you. I'm coming to you from Majority Leader Steve Scalise's office here right off the House floor because we're in the middle of a vote series. But I wanted to spend a couple minutes with you and talk about these truly dystopian developments that you just covered here. I mean, the idea that there are people in the high levels of the Biden administration who believe that the government somehow has a right to determine what is acceptable speech, what is true speech, and somehow be the arbiter of that is something that we couldn't have imagined in previous generations, but here we are. It's truth is stranger than fiction.
Yeah, and the fact that Facebook goes along with it, the left goes along with it, these big media platforms go along with it, you'd think there'd be some sort of pushback, but they happily went along with it. I mean, talk about collusion.
And that is actually exactly what was happening. We know that because of whistleblowers and information that's come out now with the Twitter files being released, we know that high-level officials in the FBI, we're talking about the U.S. Department of Justice, the federal government, the biggest law enforcement agency in our country, the FBI is meeting regularly during the last election cycle with the top executives at these social media platforms to determine what things need to be censored and silenced. And of course, it's no surprise to us that it was always the conservative voices, the conservative candidates, the conservative viewpoints. I mean, collusion is a big loaded word that has lots of connotations because they tried to use it against President Trump for impeachment purposes. But there really is no better definition of what was happening in that regard. And, you know, this is just the latest in a series of things that we are looking into. Our Select Committee on the Weaponization of the federal government is aptly named because that's what this is. You know, there's no better word to describe it. They weaponize some of the agencies that were designed, Larry, and to protect and to serve the American people have been used against them. And that is an inescapable fact, and we're going to lay out the evidence so everybody can see it.
Congressman, what is scary is that but for the laptop owner making a copy of the contents, we probably never would have known about this. And if you guys, meaning Republicans, didn't take over the House, the American people would not be knowing about this.
Well, that's exactly right. And, you know, we set up this select committee. Some people have said it's styled after the church committee as a church-style committee, and that's, of course, named after a committee in the 70s that was formed to look into abuses in our intelligence agencies at that time. They came out with some reforms. They worked for almost 2 years. They had 120 different hearings to lay out the evidence. We're going to do a similar thing here. Look, we have credible evidence now. Whistleblowers from inside the FBI, for example, dozens of them, who have come forward to say, this is wrong. This is not constitutional. This is not right. This is not what the FBI is supposed to be doing. And in a number of agencies in the federal government, we have similar kinds of information that is coming in. And so our responsibility is to have hearings, to do this in a very methodical way, to present this evidence for the American people. Ultimately, the objective is to bring about reforms to ensure that this can never happen again. Larry, people don't trust the institutions of government anymore, but because they've seen all of these abuses. We have to stop it because you can't maintain a constitutional republic unless you have these solid foundations.
Now, I know that we have the First Amendment, we have free speech, but I look at some of the stuff that Project Veritas has exposed regarding CNN, where Jeff Zucker literally told people not to pursue the lab leak theory. Are you guys going to be discussing any of this stuff?
Yes, and you're going to hear a lot about that particular subject because it's not only a crossover with our Select Committee on Weaponization, but also the Select Committee on China that has already started in earnest, and also the third Select Committee we have on the origins of the COVID virus. And so you're going to see lots of that come out. I think some of the information may not even be shocking or surprising to the American people right now, but there's a lot there, and you'll see it roll out here methodically over the next couple of weeks and months.
Larry Elder here. buy gold and get a free safe to store it in. That's right. On qualifying purchases from Birch Gold Group now through March 31st, they will ship a free safe directly to your door. All you have to do is visit larryforgold.com to get your free info kit on gold and to claim eligibility for your free safe. Here's the deal. The Fed keeps raising rates because, frankly, it's the only tool they have to keep inflation under control. And it's not working. You cannot spend your way out of inflation. You've seen the impact on the stock market. You've seen the impact on your savings. Hedge inflation by owning gold, whether physical gold and silver in your safe or through an IRA in precious metals, where you can hold real gold and silver in a tax-sheltered retirement account. Birch Gold has an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau and thousands of satisfied customers. Visit larryforgold.com for your free info kit on gold and to claim your eligibility for your free home safe by March 31st on qualifying purchases. Again, visit larryforgold.com. That's larryforgold.com. And Congressman, from the Twitter files, we also now know that any discussion about whether or not mask mandates worked or vaccine mandates were necessary or natural immunity or other treatments for coronavirus, that stuff's shut down.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Any contrary voice was quite literally censored and silenced on social media. And so in the free marketplace of ideas, which is what America is based upon, in a government of, by, and for the people, you have to have a vibrant exchange of ideas and opinions. We used to rely on the public square. It used to, in previous generations, it was literally the public square in your town where everyone would go to the gazebo and debate these public policy issues. Now that has transferred online. It's virtual. And so if the social media companies are colluding with the federal government to decide which voices can be amplified and which can be censored and silenced, we've got a problem. You can't have a free exchange of ideas, and you can't come to solutions for public policy if people are not given the facts. And that's why this is so serious. This is not an exercise in political retribution, as our Democrat colleagues are claiming. We are trying to get down to the bottom of this to make sure this is never allowed to happen again. There's a lot of important lessons to be learned here.
Congressman, what about the $419.5 million that Mark Zuckerberg, the so-called Zuckerbuck, spent in 2020 to get out Democrat turnout? Will you guys be exploring that as well?
Yeah, I think they're going to come up. It's been a big concern, and as you know, he was out in the field quite literally, right, dangling money and offering it to local clerks of court, for example, who were in charge of administering elections. It was scary. A lot of them took the bait, took that money, and there were lots of strings attached to it. So we've got to find out all the details of how that went down.
One of the things that surprised me in the midterms is how this narrative, calling Republicans election deniers, apparently really worked with a lot of Democrat voters. Hillary, for the entirety of Trump's presidency, referred to him as illegitimate, said the election was stolen. We know Stacey Abrams has said it. Al Gore to this day tells you the Supreme Court put George W. Bush in the White House in 2000. Democrats refer to him as president-elect. So Democrats for years have been engaging in, wait for it, election denying. But when Donald Trump and others expressed some skepticism about the suppression of the Hunter laptop story or about the Zuckerbucks, were accused of undermining the foundation of our republic.
It's an incredible double standard. And of course, that's the problem we have here. Often we have folks back home in our districts will say, how is it so difficult to get the conservative message out, to get the Republican talking points to circulate and all of that? Well, the reason is because, of course, the entirety of the mainstream media is arrayed against us. They work to advance the Democrats' narrative and to squelch ours. And so we're pushing uphill constantly. We're grateful for alternative media and voices like yours, Larry, that can help get the word out. And we have to rely upon that because the mainstream media sources, you know, the left owns Hollywood, they own the universities, they own the academy, they own all these institutions now. They did the long march through them, and now they have control. And that's the real challenge we have that we haven't had in previous generations. That's what we're up against.
Finally, Congressman, we'll be seeing these hearings in prime time the way they did the so-called January 6th insurrection hearings.
Yeah, and I think you'll have more people tune in to these. A good example was the opening hearing for the China Select Committee was last week, I think. They did it in prime time, and they had a lot of people watching because the American people are deeply concerned about this, Larry. It's not just you and me. It's most people in this country. They see that our institutions are being devalued in a way because they don't trust what's coming out of them. And this is a real threat to the survival of a system of government like ours. You must maintain the people's belief in these institutions. And so it's painful to air this dirty laundry. It's painful to show what's happened, but it's necessary in order for us to shore up the systems and make sure it works for future generations.
Last question, Congressman. When you hear people like Donald Trump being criticized for saying 2020 was stolen, your reaction to that is what?
Listen, every election has some element of fraud. I mean, this is an objective fact. What we know about the 2020 election, it was irregular. It was unprecedented in our history, occasioned by COVID. All the states scrambled and changed their election laws and did it in a way that, in our view, was unconstitutional because it violates the plain language of the Constitution that says only state legislatures can set the rules for those elections. When you had elections officials or a governor or a district court or somebody who changed them, they did it in a way that violated the plain language of the Constitution. So there were irregularities, there was fraud, there was all kinds of problems, and that's why people are not trusting right now. One of the first questions I get in almost every town hall and every public forum I do, Larry, is what about election security? We have to have a trust in that ballot box, or we have nothing in this country. It's so critically important, and we can't stop talking about it. We got to keep working to shore this up and make sure those things don't happen again.
I think we need same-day voting, we need voter ID, and we need a paper trail. Otherwise, yeah.
Absolutely.
Congressman Mike Johnson, thank you very much for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thank you, my friend. Good to see you.
You too. God bless. Wait a second. This is a part of the show where the great Eldersky holds up a pair of brown My Pillow, My Slippers. That's the time. And they come in different colors and they come in different styles. So if for whatever reason you don't like this style, there is an alternative. Just call that number on your screen or go to mypillow.com, promo code ELDER. And this, of course, is the product that started it all. The My Pillow, or am I being redundant? Now there's a My Pillow 2.0. You've never slept on anything more comfortable. Call the number on your screen or go to mypillow.com, promo code ELDER. And here is the 6-pack. Notice it says towels that work, meaning they absorb the water. Isn't that what a towel is supposed to do? They come in different colors. Call the number on your screen. By the way, there are over 600 My Pillow products. And don't forget, mypillow.com, promo code ELDER. Finally, this is the Giza Dream Bedsheet. Giza is an area in Egypt where the finest cotton is grown. Mike scoured the world to find the best cotton, and that's where he found it. These come in different colors. Mine, of course, is white because I am the black face of white supremacy, but you're not. You may want a different color. Also, they come in different sizes because beds come in different sizes. Again, over 100 products. Call the number on your screen or go to mypillow.com, promo code ELDER. That's mypillow.com, promo code ELDER. I am Larry Elder. This has been the Larry Elder Show for Epic Times. Remember, we've got a country to save. I'll see you next time.